Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler. After more than 3 years, the Philippines and Hong Kong finally end their row over the 2010 bus hostage crisis. This long-standing conflict haunted diplomatic relations between the two countries, with Hong Kong going as far as imposing sanctions against the Philippines. At the forefront of the renewed negotiations was Secretary to the Cabinet Rene Almendras. How did he help mend ties with Hong Kong? Secretary Almendras will also discuss another strained relationship, a huge one affecting the region, that with China, mainly over the territorial dispute in the South China Sea, or what the Philippines calls the West Philippine Sea. How does this tie up to U.S. President Obama's visit next week? Recently, President Obama said the U.S. will defend Japan against China. Will the U.S. be as protective of the Philippines? All this and more with Secretary Rene Almendras. Good morning, Secretary Almendras. Thank you for coming.
Morning, Maria.
What a lot on your plate.
Your second point. I thought we were just going to talk about Hong Kong.
Well, let's start with Hong Kong. I mean, why did it take so long to mend this? Why was this important? Why was it so emotional?
First, I think I was not yet at the palace at the time of the incident. I was more worried about brownouts and fuel prices at that time. What I know is when we started this, because in the APEC, after the chief executive and our president talked, they decided, let's go back to the table, let's talk again. What was different was there was a designated lead and some rules of the engagement. So I was selected to lead the Philippine side. Edward Yao, he's the director for the office of this chief executive, pretty much like my role, was the lead for their side. Immediately after the meeting between the chief executive and the president, we actually went to another room and I sat down with them for almost an hour, just to, housekeeping discussions. A few agreements we made. One was everything needs to be kept quiet. Two was we were going to try to find a win-win solution. And based on the comments of our President Aquino was very emphatic when he said, the only true win-win solution is a solution that is acceptable to the family. Therefore, any discussion, any interaction should be in the perspective of prioritizing the families, their situation. The emotion, I'm sorry I cannot comment on the delay, because I said I don't know much about what transpired before that. But when we started the discussions, I knew it was emotional, but I realized how emotional it is in our first trip to Hong Kong, when we sat down with the Hong Kong team, and the Secretary for Security for Hong Kong, TK Lai, yes, spoke, and he had pictures, and he had a, how do I say it, a very charged discussion.
Yes.
Very respectful, very proper, and yet you could not help but feel the intensity. I asked myself, how did we get here? In his case, he was professionally and personally involved. He was the most senior Hong Kong official who came here right after the incident. And he saw and he felt. And then in the course of the discussion, I never had a chance to meet the family members until last Wednesday. That's why I was so worried, nervous about that meeting. But the discussions always went back to the pain, the experience, the trauma for those who survived. But I think the emotion was about a feeling that we didn't care, that we were saying we were trying to close it and forget it, which is exactly why in my meeting with the family I said we do not want to forget the incident. We want to remember it, but remember it in a positive way, not remember it and swipe it under a rug or something, but really remember it and say this sad thing happened, lives were lost, let's learn from it, let's do something about it. And it was a few meetings thereafter that I decided that one of the problems was some families could actually not achieve closure. Why? Because there was a sense of struggle. There was a sense that said, no, we have to fight on. I reviewed some of the footage of some of the protest actions that happened.
Yes.
There were protest actions that happened in our consular offices in Hong Kong, and there were people who were standing up and saying, "No, we will not forget. We should not forget that this happened." And to me, that spoke a lot about why the emotions were very high. Then we decided we need to solve that too.
Right.
I mean, the situation did not allow you to just compartmentalize and say, "Wag na natin pansinin yan, let's do this." No. After the first meeting, I realized if there was going to be a win-win to this, it had to be a complete win-win, meaning every single aspect of the issues.
Fantastic.
The dimensions of politics, culture, communication, and all other issues were interspliced into a possible solution.
This was the first crisis handled by the Aquino administration, and the consensus and even the official findings show that there were officials at fault.
Yes.
And that
Maybe at fault. I these days after 6 months, 7 months of talking with them, I've learned to choose words a bit more. I think fault might be a bit strong. Maybe it should be negligence. Okay, that could be used.
Yes.
I don't think there was any intent to do wrong.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
it was more about maybe an incapacity, a limited exposure, limited information.
the images I remember is, the policeman throwing a sledgehammer into the back
Yes, I
of the
saw
bus.
that. When I saw that, I myself said, "Oh my God, what is this?"
It was incompetent at
Yes.
the best, and I think that's part of what triggered it. But over the other part politically on this was that it seemed that the wrong people were in charge. We did have the experience. There was a SWAT team on the
Yes.
side waiting to go
This all
in.
came out in the report. So I mean, it's not as if we're denying it or what. It all came out in the report. This was when we discussed the topic. Sorry, I'll refer to them as numbers because that's how I
Yes.
organized my head.
Yes.
Issue number 3.
Yes.
Okay, making sure that those responsible will be accountable for it.
Yes.
There was very extensive discussion on that. That this was between me and us, the Philippine team, and the Hong Kong government. And then there was clearly, and at the end of the day, said, "No, we're not going to deny that. I mean, sorry, I am not going to sugarcoat or this is the reality.
Yes.
We all saw it on TV."
Yes. This is a question that's come in from social media from Rondel Apello. Why can't, before I ask you the question, one of the key demand from the Hong Kong government, from the people, seemed to be for a written apology from the Philippine government. His question says, why can't the government appointed by the people to represent the people apologize for an incident where the Filipino people clearly are apologetic? In Tagalog, bakit mahirap mag-sorry ang gobyerno pero willing naman mag-sorry ang taong bayan?
Okay, first, I don't mean to debate him, but I really wanted to connect to how the people's sentiments were. An ABS-CBN survey showed huge number of people did not want to apologize. There was sentiment that said this is already too much. I do not necessarily agree with that. I am being criticized today by saying OA daw, too much daw kami, and all that. Even among the domestic helpers, Filipinos working in Hong Kong, there was a survey done. I don't want to talk about the numbers, but
Yes.
I don't think we can actually say that a huge majority of Filipinos want to make an apology. As a matter of fact, it may be, I'm not saying it's huge, but the slant might be in the other way. Earlier, it could have been that, but towards the latter part, with all the brickbats being thrown against each other, emotions in Hong Kong and emotions in Manila were also being agitated.
Yes.
It is not appropriate for me to discuss the technical constraint of making a national government apology at this time. Maybe in the future, when wounds have healed better, there will be a time to discuss that again. In the course of discussing this, my boss, President Aquino, was painted very badly in saying that he was the one who did not want to apologize. I think that President Aquino's personality is not aligned to that accusation. he is known to have been humble enough to accept fault when he is. Let me put it this way. When this topic was very heavy, a diplomat from another country talked to me. And he said, you can't do that, because if you do that, you are going to create an international thing. So at this time, I guess the right answer is, bakit nga ba kung hindi pwede? Kung if it was as simple as just saying that, bakit hindi ba? Hindi naman tayo mayabang eh. Pero ang Pangulo natin, hindi naman mayabang eh. Ang Pilipino, hindi naman mayabang eh. Pero ngayon nga hindi pwede dahil pag ginawa mo yun, may maraming, and it's not about damages. It's not about them saying na umamin kayo, you accepted fault by apologizing. That's why now we're gonna sue you and we're gonna get as much money from you. No, because we've demonstrated it's not a question of amount.
Yes.
I think we have achieved a situation where we were able to explain to them that our emotions, our feelings are there, but give us a chance to express this in another way other than and achieve the same objective without having to use certain things because of the complication that it may cause. Let me put it this way. I guess I can say it, but I'm very careful in how to say it. I do not want to offend the family. I am very grateful to the family members in Hong Kong. They have been patient with us. They have been, the mere fact that they finally agreed to see me, to me was, thank you, Lord. I mean, that was a variable until Tuesday. As a matter of fact, until Wednesday morning when I arrived in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong government still could not determine how many members were going to show up and who were going to show up. All you need to do is look around the world, look at all terrorist and criminal incidents that have happened in other places that have caused people to die from other countries, and how those countries had to resolve it among themselves. It cannot be done right now.
Okay. And the impact of this, the ripple effect of this festering issue up until yesterday, of this festering issue over the Philippines' relationship with China, which is strained at best now.
Initially, if you remember, when this incident happened, Beijing was actually on our side. I mean, they did try to, our relationships with them were still in a very ideal situation at that time. Yes, but the problem of the complication of the apology has nothing to do with China West Philippine Sea. The complication is a bit bigger than that. It's about a whole world. It's about a country saying sorry for a terrorist act or a criminal act in its domain that affected somebody else. It's not, I want to clarify that very well. We're not saying we won't say sorry because it's Hong Kong or China. No, it could have been another country. And the constraints and the complexity would still be there.
So you're saying this impacts on national sovereignty issues, that kind of?
It's not just now national sovereignty, it's...
pride?
No, it has nothing to do with pride. It's about the word terrorist and criminal. I'm not a lawyer, I'm sorry. That's the one that creates the issues.
Well, it's interesting because another question coming in from social media from Emmer Agka is asking the opposite. Will Hong Kong officials extend the same sentiment by apologizing for the deaths of OFWs? Can we expect reciprocity?
See, that's the point. And many other places. If somebody, and it did happen. I studied a particular situation where a group of Hong Kong residents died in a bus accident in Egypt. There was no terrorist act or criminal act, and yet that was also an issue.
So you're saying that the Philippines couldn't do it because of precedents and because of the way diplomatic relations have always been established between countries. Okay.
No country can be held accountable for the actions of their citizens in another country. I mean, even the High Court in Hong Kong made that decision after the families filed their cases. I pay tribute to the propriety and sobriety in which the High Court in Hong Kong made that decision. But they were very much aware of international conventions.
What did you do that resolved this now?
What did we do? The guidance of President Aquino was very important. When he said that the only solution he saw was a solution that would and should be anchored on the families. There are political considerations in Hong Kong and here.
Yes.
This was a favorite argument between administration and opposition there. Some people were even saying every time they needed to create something, this topic would be brought about. I'm not saying that's true. This was accusations there. If you allow the politics of it, of course you had to consider the impact of the politics, but you don't make it a determinant in your action. There is a cultural dimension. Yesterday I said I wanted to thank Dr. Palanca of the Confucius Institute in Ateneo.
Yes.
I did spend time with her and asked her why this, why that. We must respect the diversity of cultures between us and the Chinese. But if you make that as the primary determinant, it won't work. I guess the reason why this finally went through was because a lot of people helped. Okay, I have been accused of, sorry, I know Rappler likes being straight. I've been accused of many things since this happened. No, I do not have any political ambitions. I have never used this to promote myself. I have never claimed that this happened because of me. I started all my press conferences by saying there are so many people that we need to thank. You needed, the good thing here was the humane consideration was the primary determinant. I became very emotional in the meeting with the family. It was started by the Hong Kong government to really be that.
Yes.
But me personally, I was. Why? Because I studied the circumstance of each of the victims.
Yes.
I knew who Jason was. I knew who was. I knew who Yik was. I knew what they went through. I knew. Without meeting them, I had to understand, because you're trying to understand when somebody raises an issue and says, eto gusto ko.
Yes.
Hindi ko pwedeng ibigay yan eh. The next question is, bakit niya kaya hinihingi ito? Why is this so important to
Yes.
this person? But I guess I made so many promises about confidentiality, but I need to say this. Some people are saying, bakit tayo bumigay and all that? No. I'm being criticized now for having buttered up to Hong Kong too much, or have given too much, or what. Parang nagpa-api or what. No, hindi naman ganon. Imagine yourself the mother. You lost your husband, you lost 2 children, and the only surviving child you have is now still in therapy, who probably will not be able to live a normal life. How do I go to that mother and say, how dare I go to that mother and say, kalimutan na natin to, or sa patawarin mo na kami? Hindi pwede, di ba? I mean, you can imagine the intensity of the emotion. And if you put yourself in her shoes, I'm sure you'll agree with me na dapat naman siguro wag tayo masyadong di ba?
No, that makes sense, and it actually seems like you were able to deal both with the family and with these.
The biggest challenge was to convince people that we'd had no agenda. See, one of the reasons why there was so much suspicion, why there was so much negativeness, was that even there, some of them were feeling, ginagamit lang kami nitong mga to eh. You know, this guy is okay, so they're now here, they're crying with us, but there's picture taking thereafter. I mean, to me, that was probably the first step, to show them that, President Aquino is sincere.
Trust.
He wants to solve this. He wants to solve this the right way. We are there I'm not there to promote myself or to promote an agenda. We're really there to look for a solution.
This is a question coming in from social media from Abdel Blow. What and how much compensation did the government give?
The government did not spend a single peso on compensation. Again, let me repeat, compensation is not the appropriate word. You cannot put value to the life of a person. You can never say, I will give you X amount to compensate you for the loss of your loved one. I don't think it's appropriate. Neither is it appropriate in the Chinese culture. That's why we call it a token of solidarity. In Tagalog, abuloy.
Yes.
We do that. Somebody passes away, kahit hindi mo kilala nga, minsan mas maganda pa nga yung nag-aabuloy ka sa taong hindi mo kilala.
Yes.
Bakit kailangan ka magbigay? Dahil you want to show na I'm willing to part with something important to me. And let's not be a hypocrite in saying money is important to everyone, but here is my way of showing my solidarity. Nakikiramay ako. Ang hirap i-translate nung nakiramay. I've tried to find an English word to translate nakikiramay kami. Hindi, apology is not nakikiramay. Iba yung nakikiramay, di ba? So,
yes.
As to the
Sharing
amount,
in your grief, sharing in your grief.
The government did not spend a single peso. I will stand for that.
Yeah, it was raised through private
It was raised through private donations. A substantial amount here, and some people in Hong Kong actually also contributed.
Will you disclose the amount?
No, I cannot disclose the amount. There is no point in talking about the amount. If I mention an amount, some people will say ang laki, some people will say ang liit.
So in a nutshell, why did the victims concede at this point in time when they hadn't for the last 3 years?
I think the chief executive during his press con used the word sincerity. The family spokesperson used the same word. I think we were able to show that we were truly, sincerely trying to come to a closure and a resolution to this. That it was not because we wanted to gain political hit points or sanctions. No, it was really just. I was asked yesterday, why did people give?
Yes.
I said because people were just tired of having to go through this, and we're just saying, pwede ba tapusin na natin and let's do it in a correct way.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on this and resolving this issue. Let me move forward to the power dynamics are changing globally, and the Philippines' own role in many of these things is changing dramatically in the last few months. You have the U.S., which still says it has an Asia pivot. President Obama is coming here, but at the same time, there's been a power vacuum of sorts in the region, a power that's partly been filled by a more aggressive China. The Philippines has filed a case at clause for what's happening in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea. How do you see this playing out? And when you're in the middle of the decision making, when you're there in Malacanang, how does Malacanang see the Philippines' changing role between these two giants?
First, I must say, the president has been very, very sober. Some people would have thought that he'd be a bit more. No, on the contrary. Even President Obama, when we met him in his office, in the Oval Office, at the height of the Bajo de Masinloc incident, the first thing President Obama said was to praise the president for his sobriety, his even keel, no thing. Decisions are hard to make because you talk of people's lives, you talk of future, you talk of present, and there are value exchanges. I think I fully agree that going to ITLOS was the right thing to do. Maria, if we were neighbors and we had a hedge between our houses, and you tell me suddenly, sorry, I think that hedge is mine, not mine's not. So option one is we start fighting, we argue, we throw things at each other, or just try to make everyone try to make your life as miserable, you try to make my life as miserable. The other option is to seek, ano ba talaga, saan ba talaga?
Yes.
And siyempre, you will say, hindi, akin to. And I will say, di, akin to.
Correct.
And we can do that forever and not resolve it. So the decision was, let's look for somebody who probably and possibly can finally say, kanino ba talaga to? Para hindi tayo mag-away. I've been a I don't know, it's a curse. I've been sitting in a village board for most of my life. I've been a president of a village association for many years. And I started a rule that said, if a neighbor has a problem with another neighbor, huwag muna kayong dumiretso. Okay, come to the village association, come to the office, tell us, we'll talk to your neighbor without telling that neighbor who is the one complaining. Kasi pag dumiretso ka, wala na yan eh. Mainit na yan. And that, to me, is the same thing about the 8 laws. You have to do that. Second, what's the geopolitical situation? Yes, I understand. I've read, we've studied why these things are happening, the historical background. The pivot, yes, Washington is sincere in that. I am very convinced of that.
But its ability to maintain its role as a global policeman is greatly diminished.
Yes, it has, but it intends to continue to keep the, I don't want to use the word standard, but it's like telling everybody, oh ha, ganito tayo dapat, setting
Rules of the game.
Oh, mahirap i-impose yung rule because you're not sure. You're not saying, how dare you tell me what to do?
Okay.
You're basically, what you need to do is say, sandali lang, magkakagulo tayo pag wala tayong napag-usapan eh. So mag-usap tayo, eto ang tama, eto ang dapat. The visit, yes, it was supposed to happen last year. There were some difficulties. As early as the year before, we did discuss it at the State Department in Washington, D.C. That was already being discussed. Your mention about statements in Japan, there will be statements here. There have been, and will continue to be discussions on trade issues, economic issues, and security issues.
Yes.
We are all, at the end of the day, it's about everybody saying, hey, we don't want to rock the boat. We want, I think President Aquino said it well when he talked to one of the Chinese leaders when he said, your aspirations for your people are exactly the same as my aspirations for my people, which is you want progress, you want better life, you want a better future for your people. And that's exactly what we want for our people. And that's how we should act. We're not in conflict. Your aspirations and ours is the same.
But what's your assessment of China now? I mean, you're basically seeing China over the last 2 years really becoming more aggressive.
Yes, they have. There have been inconsistencies. There have been signals that we thought was supposed to transmit this, but actually the other thing happened.
Correct. Well, like for example, in Scarborough Shoal, there was a standoff of vessels. China brought an overwhelming number against ours. The Philippines, according to an agreement with China, pulled out, but China did not pull out. How do you see this?
You're the one who said that. Okay.
But
yes, that's what I said. There have been inconsistencies, or at certain points in time, there are actually questions like, are we talking to the right person, or is there such a thing as are they one? Okay.
So is it an intended consequence, or
it can be a strategy? Yeah, it can be it can be a deliberate structure to keep you guessing.
is there really a possibility that China could be so aggressive as to start real conflict in the West Philippine Sea?
I hope not. At this point in time, I don't think so. And we have not done anything to agitate such a reaction. We have not claimed anything new that we have not claimed prior to. The DOC was there. We were already in Ayungin at the time of the DOC. DOC said, where you are, stay there. No need to fight. Basta kung nasaan ka, doon ka. I mean, we've honored that, I think.
In an ASEAN Track 2 dialogue that I was part of, one of the analysis of this is that China is actually, it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts. small little conflicts where when they gain ground, they're able to actually move forward when you put them all together.
Yes, there is a documented theory. It's called the creeping invasion strategy, which was written about by not by Filipinos alone, by many. I'm not sure if it was India or Russia that also had the same perspective. I'm not saying that it is. All I'm saying is there are documents, there are reading materials and opinions.
Well, the other side of it is, could this just be China? A good friend, Jimmy Flor Cruz, actually compared China to a teenager flexing its muscles and more concerned with nationalism.
Yes.
Which one do you think is the right perspective?
I think they are not exclusive.
Okay.
I don't think you can say it's this or that. I think there is a play between the two.
So China's elections are coming up now, and it actually said it will wait for the next leader, one who can be friendlier. What do you make of this statement?
It is to their opinion that the previous administration was friendlier than we are. They are entitled to that opinion. My opinion is we have, and President Aquino loves this country tremendously. He wants to do the right thing for this country, and history will show, and documents will show that he has never made a decision inconsistent with that stand.
What about ASEAN? Here we are talking about an ASEAN, the economic community in December 2015, but in the major security problems like the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea, ASEAN has been very quiet. What do you expect? Again, looking at this, a potential power vacuum in leadership, who will fill that role?
There is a norm in the ASEAN called consensus.
Yes.
Everybody has got to say yes to do it. And the other side to that, if there's a no, we might as well not say it. So, if you talk of numbers, if you talk of who has more who and what, I think yes, more members of the ASEAN want clear resolution. Let's solve it. Let's do it. There are the outspoken ones, which is us, Vietnam, Indonesia, now Malaysia,
Yes.
Singapore. There are those who believe in the same, who believe in world order, on a convention that will create peace. That's a good number of people. They're not speaking up, but they're there. My view is that even if it's not discussed, there is a general understanding of why it's important.
Interesting. Okay, so in the context now of President Obama's visit, given the increased aggression of China in our part of the world, does that make the United States more important? Is this more of the same? How do you see...
First, let me clarify, I'm not the spokesperson for the President. I really am very careful about saying these things, nor am I the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. I'm just a staff to the President, okay? So I'm very careful about making such comments because they are not policy declarations on my part. I have no authority to make such policy declarations. I'd like to see it as friends visiting friends. They may send certain signals to some friends, but I guess it's an honor for us to be visited by the President of the United States of America. There has been historical affinity between the two. We've fought together. We've gone through challenges together. So I'd like to stick to that. I'd rather than put too much weight on, And if other analysts see it otherwise, it's their job to see it as such.
Except you're in the seat of power, Secretary Almendras. You're too modest. Well, let me ask you your final thoughts. I mean, the Philippines had, at some point last year, we had a 0.1% GDP rate that was higher than China. How would you describe the Philippines today and the role we're playing?
We did a review of all our plans because of Yolanda. I mean, prior to Yolanda, I had a good number of the roadmaps, a large majority of each agency's roadmaps ready. I had it in my computer, we knew, we were aligned, everything, a very integrated plan. Yolanda happened, we stepped back and said, nope, things are going to change. So we focused on the Human Development Poverty Reduction Cluster. We set back 3-4 months just to reevaluate what you do. Offhand, the economy will remain strong. The rehabilitation effort will even build on the economy, will even foster economic development. But because we want inclusive growth, we're saying, but we need to focus on human development and poverty reduction. So right now, the battle cry is that you need to educate people well, train them, give them the skills so they can find jobs. Manufacturing is increasing, investments are coming. People now see the Philippines' potential, and yet you look around, there are offices that are looking for people, and they cannot find the people that they need. But then if you look outside, you're going to see a lot of people who don't have jobs because they don't have skill. That's why you've more than doubled your TESDA budget. Education more than doubled in the past 3 years. CHED's trying to rationalize. No more courses that are not needed. Let's do this. These are the courses that are needed. Government scholarship is now focused. Once upon a time, you can take anything you want. Now we're saying, no, wait, you need to take these courses because these are the ones that are going to get you jobs. Ongoing discussions on dual tech book, apprenticeship programs. They're all coming in. And we are not doing just lip service. There's a lot of resources of government. Even the budgeting process has been focused to really dive into human development. Then poverty reduction, you cannot completely isolate. They're melded together. We are doing great things in rural areas. We're defining space where intervention is needed. So the economy, I think, will cruise along. The challenge is making sure it filters to where it is most needed. So that's why I've been speaking about inclusive business. That's why I've been telling the big guys, why not do business in this remote area? Number one, labor is cheaper there because minimum wage is lower, water is cleaner, air is cleaner. There's a lot more that can be done there. Some are moving in. We know we need to build the infrastructure. Most of the road and bridge infrastructures are very much on schedule. The PWH is doing a great job. We continue to face challenges on the DOTC projects, which is just as badly needed. We need those airports. We need those light rail transit systems. We need those ports because we need to create. If I were to move investments to places where they are most needed, which is in the poor sectors, in the poor spaces, then I need to make sure goods can flow in. It's like Hot Pablo, the hot chili program in Davao Oriental that we did. Chile, we knew chili was a good crop because southern Luzon, kaya nga panay it's storm resistant. 3 days after a storm, it will burn. But we did not have the roads nor the ports in Davao Oriental. Therefore, you could not sell the fresh chili. So we said, what can we do? So that's when you brought processing to dry it there on site. So now you've got $2 million worth of exports and things like that. The degree of understanding on the structure of poverty, the space of poverty, and the dynamics of poverty in certain locations is not a one-size-fits-all. This administration said, hindi, ibang kwento nito, ibang solution dito. That's why we said poverty incidence is different from poverty magnitude. If you have high poverty incidence, there's probably a structural problem why most of the people in this province are poor. If it's magnitude, it's a different dynamic. Cebu, very progressive, growing really well, has one of the highest magnitudes. Why? Because it draws people. But if they don't have the skill set that is needed, it's not going to work. And then the reality of climate change is we have vulnerable communities. I am very afraid and worried because I have a number in my mind which I'm never going to tell you, but I'm so worried. We're running our new NHTS survey, National House Targeting System survey. We've been able to bring the poor up above the poverty line. And then you have somebody like Yolanda come in, and you're near poor, and even a portion of your middle class, you've just pushed them back down. I mean, a farmer who has a hollow block house, has a TV set, probably has a ref, maybe even a washing machine, that he accumulated through many years of retained earnings from his enterprise, has lost everything. And if you ask him, Maria, he's poor. Your dissipated net worth at that level. So he's got, it took years to build that. So the challenge is employment generation, livelihood initiatives in all of these areas.
So you're saying that in the last 2 minutes of the administration, it's focused on making sure growth trickles down to the people, and then having that spur more growth.
Yes, you know, the president said, and we are told about a demographic sweet spot by 2015. Great, let's make sure they're employable.
Correct.
If you achieve demographic sweet spot 2015, you sustain your 7+ growth.
Correct.
By 2018 or 19, economic
So
inflection.
how much of a monkey wrench can AEC, the ASEAN Economic Community, bring to that?
We see it as an opportunity. Your demand, your economy is what, 70% consumption.
Yes.
We're the second largest to Indonesia's 250 million residents. We have a consumption base. We see it as an opportunity because we have something that others don't have. Okay, they may have the manufacturing, but hopefully we can produce the food that they need. So it can. The key is to be as efficient and as competitive as we can.
But if you see all of ASEAN, 600 million people as one economy, we are also vulnerable because as the middle one, we're
Yes.
not going to get the massive investment for infrastructure and manufacturing. That will go to Cambodia, Laos, the poorer countries, and we're not the Singapore.
Yeah, but you will also see that investments will look for the ideal destinations.
Okay.
An ideal may be geographic, ideal may be cultural, ideal may be a cost. I mean, once upon a time, factories left us because they went to China because they said it's cheaper there. Now they're coming back. And things like that give you an inclination. And we need to choose where do we want to engage. It's got to be a very intelligent discussion among the experts. Where do we want to engage in ASEAN?
Fantastic. It's been a very wide-ranging conversation in the last 30 minutes, Secretary Almendras. I'll give you your last thoughts. I mean, we've gone from you finishing the hostage crisis, this emotional conflict now out of the way, and then to geopolitics, to economics. Your last thoughts. Where are we? Where are we headed?
I think times are very good for the Philippines. Structural changes have happened. Even people changes have happened. Within the bureaucracy, we've instituted reforms in the way things are done. And I see the shift may be slow in some areas in the way government and people think. This is not the administration that will reap the seeds that have been planted. This is the administration that had to make the difficult decisions of making decisions, some of them not popular, but decisions that had to be made because these decisions will translate to better things in the future.
So this is absorbing the pain.
The economic growth that we see now can be sustained. The economic development that we see now can be enhanced and grow even faster. It will need the next administration to hopefully do the right thing. We do not claim brilliance or mistakes were made. But my hope and prayer, my personal hope and prayer is those that will come after us will see the good things, the right things that have been done, and will see it through. Because like most problems, even in a corporation, you cannot change a corporate culture or a structure in 1 year or 2 years. It takes years to shift things. It's like a big ship. You can't turn it in a minute. It takes momentum to make that shift. And that hope and prayer is there. You need, when you wake up in the morning, you need a reason to go to work. And if you don't think that what you're doing is going to make sense, it's really difficult. So I would like to be hopeful that this country is really going to fly. I mean, we are ready to fly. Unfortunately, we're not the ones who are going to make it fly. We don't have that privilege. Those that will come after will have that wonderful privilege of, we are just fueling up the plane, preparing the tires, clearing the runways, but it's the next guys who will come after us that can really push the throttle and fly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We have been talking to the Secretary to the Cabinet, Rene Almendras. Wide-ranging conversations starting about the resolution of conflict between the Philippines and Hong Kong over the 2010 hostage crisis to the role of the Philippines today in our region and the world. He is on Twitter. He also is available to...
No, I'm not on Twitter.
Oh, you're not on Twitter. Facebook?
I am not also allowed to go on Facebook.
Oh my Lord. Okay, so you heard him here. We'll speak to him more.
I hear about what people say on me on Twitter. I have a lot of a lot of my team members are young and well connected.
This is starting another conversation, but we'll take that offline. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us.